Well, in August 2001, Ahlam Tamimi brought a guitar case filled with explosives to the Sbarro pizzeria in Jerusalem. She handed it to a suicide bomber called al-Masri, who then detonated it and himself and murdered 15 people, 8 of them children. Asked later about the families and children whose murder she had masterminded, Tamimi answered she had no regrets. When told that she had murdered 8 children, she broke into a big smile.
وأنا بدوري حققت لهذا الاستشهادي الحياة التي يريد.
לא חשבת על האנשים שהיו בתוך המסעדה? הילדים, המשפחות?
لا.
את יודעת כמה ילדים נהרגו בסבארו?
3 أطفال قتلوا في هذه العملية أعتقد.
8.
8.
Ahlam Tamimi was caught and sentenced to 16 life sentences, but was, insanely in my view, released after only 10 years as part of a prisoner exchange deal between the Israeli government and Hamas. She has since lived in Jordan and has often been treated repulsively like a rock star by some in the Arab world. I've mentioned this horrific Palestinian terrorist attack before on Outsiders, but there was a new and horrible twist in the story this week. Ahlam Tamimi has been trying to reunite with her husband, another convicted terrorist, and as part of that effort, she popped up on a Jordanian radio station a week or so ago, trying to gain a sympathetic audience. But presumably realising who she was, the radio station, quite correctly, cut her off. But then, astonishingly, who comes to her assistance? The BBC, of all people, decided to help this evil woman in what is yet another disgusting example of how left-leaning media are prepared to sugarcoat murderers and convicted terrorists so long as they have killed the right sort of people, in this case, innocent Jews. 10 days ago, BBC's Arabic TV service beamed a programme called Trending throughout the world, all about Tamimi, in an effort to create sympathy for this vile child murderer. This show is part of the BBC's World Service programming funded by the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and it willingly served as a mouthpiece for a terrorist responsible for the killing of 8 children. One of those 8 children was Melbourne-born Malki Roth. She was attending a birthday party with friends at the Sbarro pizzeria, which Tamimi had specifically scouted for the suicide bomber because of the high likelihood that there were always children in there. After fleeing the scene disguised as a tourist, unbelievably, Tamimi then went on Palestinian TV later that night, where she was a news presenter and gloated about the bombing. Malki Roth, one of the 8 children murdered, was only 15. Her father, Arnold, joins us live from Jerusalem, where it's 2 in the morning. Arnold, welcome back to Outsiders.
Nice to see you, Rowan.
Arnold, you were quite rightly extremely upset by the BBC giving not only support last week but sympathy to the woman responsible for the death of your daughter, and you wrote a scathing piece about it in which you said, for giving a sympathetic megaphone to one of the world's most loathsome, unrepentant child murderers, the BBC must be brought to account for glorifying the murderers of Israelis and Jews. You also claim that the programme was an outrageous piece of political propaganda that skipped, distorted or got things wrong. Please explain.
It's one thing to be objective and report the news from perhaps both sides, and the BBC consistently describes itself as the supreme example of an objective broadcaster who does that. But starting in 2017, when a massive injection of funds from the organisation that you just named there, Rowan, the British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, of almost £300 million sterling, massively expanded the part of the BBC's operations that looks at places like Jordan and the Arabic-speaking world. And one of the fruits of that, in fact, the one that was showcased in the media announcement at the time, is this program that we're talking about now. It's called Trending, and its purpose, to be generous to the people who own it, is to put a finger on the pulse of the social media in parts of the world that perhaps don't get enough attention. So at Trending, they heard about the situation you just described, where Tamimi was kicked off at Melody FM, a very popular talk show station in Jordan, and they gave her the opportunity to tell her version of it, and it is 100% from start to finish, self-pitying, a claim for her human rights. I find this extraordinary. I can barely get the words out. And utterly sympathetic. I've watched it 100 times. I've sat with people who understand Arabic in order to really get out all of the nuances, and I'm just nauseated by what the BBC have done. It's now, as you've just said, 10 days since that program went to air. On the YouTube version of it, it was seen by 275,000 people up until Friday morning, and at that point, for reasons that no one has explained, it was taken off the air, but it's still on the BBC's own website, and it continues to be enthralling and entertaining the people who are drawn to it. I should also just say that I'm scouring for any critical comment of either Tamimi or the BBC for this in the Arabic-speaking world. That's what the internet lets you do, and I haven't found any yet.
Rita.
The BBC report also seemed to indicate that she was just accused of these crimes, as if there was some doubt towards her guilt. But as we've described, she has been boastful about the role she played and has never really expressed any sort of regret. I'm just wondering, as a father who's lost his daughter to these women's actions, what do you want to happen? I mean, it just seems to be an absolute travesty that she's not behind bars for the rest of her natural life. But what can be done to bring her to account, or at least to make people aware of who she is and what she's done?
Let me just say two specific things about that, Rita, and thank you for being as precise as you've just been. First is that we're looking to see her extradited to the United States. That sounds like it's fighting words, but in fact, the United States made it very clear in March 2017 that that's what it wants, and it called on Jordan to honour the 1995 extradition treaty between the two countries. I could talk literally for hours from this point going forward about the nonsense that is not only put out, but swallowed up, put out by the Jordanians and swallowed up by almost every journalistic organisation in the world. The woman in question has always been called at every possible opportunity in every part of the Arabic media. I'm sorry if I'm sounding too general about this, but I can back every word up, as being a detainee, as being a freed, I'm forgetting the word now, everything except a prisoner. And even when they do call her a prisoner, as the BBC in passing did, they somehow forget to say what the hell she is a prisoner for. No mention of the murders, no mention of the victims, no mention of my daughter. It's hard for me to speak rationally about this subject because it's just absolutely incensing what the media, and not only the BBC, but the BBC is the most outstanding example, have done at all times is to adopt the completely self-deluding Arabic narrative, particularly the Islamist narrative. Tamimi is an Islamist activist. She was in the service of Hamas when she carried out the massacre. And for them, she didn't do anything wrong. For herself, she didn't do anything wrong. She is accused. She is alleged. She was there, and we don't really know why she was there. And you could keep going on with total nonsense of that kind. But the United States wants her to stand trial in US federal court on charges of terrorism leading to the deaths of not only the 15 people we've talked about, but a 16th woman who's been unconscious from that day until today. It's a horrific story. I'm appalled at the way the BBC have approached this.
James.
I'd want to ask, you've said that there was an awful lot of approbation and acclaim for her in the Arabic comments. Have there been any blowback for the BBC's behaviour in essentially giving this woman, this terrorist, a platform in the English-speaking media and in the UK? Have they cottoned on to what's been going on? Have the general public cottoned on to what is happening on their Arabic language service that they, as British taxpayers, are paying for?
I'll try to give the answer in the shortest possible way. My life and that of my wife is devoted to getting people angry, and we don't usually succeed. In the UK, I'm not aware of any official response. We've certainly not gotten any response, nor has there been one from the BBC, and for that matter, from Facebook, because Facebook did pretty much the same thing just a couple of weeks ago, but with them, we're already taking legal action. What are we going to do with the BBC? Well, we'd like to see some reaction from the British, but this has been years of people simply swallowing this up, sometimes looking at us in sort of very patronizing ways and saying, well, you know, the Jordanians are our friends and no one really wants to, you know, blow them away. I'm sorry, but we've reached the end of our budget for that kind of self-deluding nonsense. And this latest, and it's not the first, latest outrage, atrocity by the BBC, making it clear to its Arabic-speaking audiences that she's not guilty of anything, and if anybody is a victim, it's her. That's really something that other people, not just us, need to take on board and to say, the hell with it. This is outrageous. The terrorism will never end if you people keep supporting it in this way.
Arnold Roth speaking to us from Jerusalem. Thanks so much. And we had some lovely photos up there of Malki, and obviously our thoughts are with you and your family. Thanks so much for staying up and speaking to outsiders so late at night in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Rowan. Anytime. Thank you.